So this is the assignment for the full draft of the research paper. Um, they give you this, um, what amounts to basically a checklist of things. So it's another sort of tool, and it's like the requirements, right? How long it should be, how many sources you need, all of those things. And this is connected to the actual assignment. It also includes, which is odd, but it includes like the plan for each of the weeks for this 8-week course, sort of. I mean, it's good, I guess, but like we're sort of on the week 5. So in any event, I guess it's also trying to show the progression, right? The stuff that you've done that you want to be able to sort of use, like you now know what your sources are and what they have in them, things like that. So I would say download this just because it'll give you the actual requirements, right? As opposed to the outline, which is going to help you make an argument. This is like, all right, the actual essay needs to be APA, title page, and all of that business. So that's attached to the actual assignment itself. All right, so thesis statements, just a quick talk about what they are, what they do, what they don't need to do. So again, I'm saying that you want to have a thesis statement where you're making the broadest case for whatever you're talking about. So I know some people's topics, but like for example, if you're doing something about like water, that it needs to be clean or healthier, or and we need to save it or whatever. You want to make sort of a top, general statement about the United States needs to conserve water and improve water quality, and then you're going to try to come up with sort of 3 main areas to talk about. So you're not the thesis is not a place where you use any like specifics or information, like quotes for anything. You never use quotes, and you never use a question. So thesis statement is basically an answer to a question, a research question in theory. Um, as you're writing, you're just sort of making sure that what you're talking about is still connected to what your thesis is general subject, your main argument, right? So that you don't get sidetracked and you start talking about some other little part that's not really a big. I don't think that happens as much anymore. All right, let's see. Mhm. All right, these are all just hints, and I mean it's from Chamberlain. So but some of it's, I don't know that it's super helpful in a practical way. Um, like you're keeping balance, structure, and unity in mind. Like, all right, mostly you're just writing and then putting things sort of where they go. So that's the one thing that is interesting or that might help people, I think, is this one idea. And this is because I think they refer to this in either the lesson, probably the lesson or the textbook, but um, the idea about that this is sort of like a courtroom, right? You're trying to make a case for something, that something needs to be done. Um, and then and you're trying to give evidence to help support that. So I don't if you think of it as you're sort of a lawyer and you take that sort of position, right, that you are arguing in front of somebody to convince them about this thing, that can help you just sort of by the words that you end up choosing, the way you phrase things, like it can help you sort of achieve that just by sort of having it in your mind that what you're doing is trying to convince somebody. So, I mean, I do think that that might be sort of a useful, but you can take a look at this PowerPoint yourself, which is in the discussion board, if you want to take a look at these different, things to keep in mind. And this is from the lesson, so you'll see those there too. Um, yeah, I guess there is this idea that you do an introduction and then you do your essay and then you sort of go back to the introduction and just make sure that the introduction sort of matches what you ended up writing about. So doing the introduction sort of, or changing it or altering it after you have most of the draft done is pretty common. So that's just something that you might want to make sure that you do before you decide to submit it. Right. Okay. This is all about the hook for the very beginning, the introduction of the first two sentences. I always say these are different things you can do, right? Use a quote or a surprising fact. You find a story in your research and you tell a little story, like, the story of this kid who drank this terrible water and has this whatever, like things that can introduce the subject and also make people feel like this matters. So take a look at some of these if you're interested in, trying something out. But you definitely want the first one or two sentences to be, their job is just to make someone interested in reading on. So you don't want to use things like water pollution has always been a problem in America. Like those type of sentences are boring. We all know that, right? So you want to end up with something like, 13 children are going to die next month from lead poisoning. You're like, whoa, wait, what's up with this? Right? Of course, it has to be true, right? I just made that up, but you know what I mean? So you have your introduction and your conclusion, and I actually have a thing I'll be posting about writing conclusions and introductions. I guess I'll bring that one back. But conclusions is the closing argument, which is a good idea. I mean, that I think, the lawyer thing, where you're basically, the whole point of the conclusion is to be like, okay, you restate what your main thing is, your main argument is. You sort of point to the facts, or you point to the information and the arguments that you've already brought up, but you're doing it in a certain way. Like, all right, here's what we have. We have this, or this, because you're trying to leave a final impression. If it's in a courtroom, it's with a jury, right? But so you're trying to leave an impression with the reader about your subject. So the closing, like I said, I have some things about that. Oh, it's my things twice. Yeah, I will post this thing about. Yeah, I have a whole little quick video and then this obvious PowerPoint, very quick about what conclusions should be doing, right? You transition from the main paper into the conclusion, and then you're thinking about it, meaning you're sort of starting, it's the opposite of the introduction, where you start broad and get narrow. Here, you're already in the paper, so you've just talked about something very specific. And so you're sort of broadening it out and you're trying to end with sort of a big, broad view of the subject, of the problem, rather. Okay, so do look through these. Like I said, it's already posted in the discussion board. But there's like little tips for the conclusion. The reason I'm sort of like asking people to look at these sort of on their own is because we're writing a whole draft introduction, here's your thesis, here's your conclusion, here's your body paragraphs, here's your, it's like craziness. So the resources are there for you to take a look at once you need to look at them. You know what I mean? Like once you're starting your conclusion, then go take a look at the conclusion. But I don't want to go ahead and, fill this all up with all the things because it makes it sound like it's too much stuff. The conclusion game I'll post. You're just deciding what's a good, bad, and adequate conclusion. Well, okay, and that's from Todd. Okay, that's sort of just extra information. Yeah, topic sentences. Okay. So what I'm going to do, let me stop this here. So basically, if I haven't yet, I will, but I've done it for a couple things. Like I want to record like short videos that talk about each thing, right? Like here's what a thesis statement is. 3 minutes of me talking about thesis statements and boom, boom, boom. Like I said, I have an issue with watching videos. So I'm always aware. I'm always assuming that nobody has time for videos or wants to watch very long videos, which may or may not be true. In any event, um, I will put the different ones in our discussion board this week, starting like the thesis, the introduction, so that when you are moving on or whatever part of the essay you're working at, you can watch a quick video about that section and maybe that will help. And I think that probably helps more than like watching a 35-minute or 40-minute beginning to end. I don't know if I'm wrong about this. People should feel free to tell me that. Like if you'd rather have like one longer one that you can stop and go back. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what helps people more. But it's basically right. If you have a really long one, you could pause it and then do stuff and then keep it going, I guess. Or if I just put the small ones right next to each other. Anyway, yeah, maybe I'll do a poll. I'll do a poll and see what people say. In any event, how it's going to go this time in the discussion board, you'll see some short videos about each section of the essay. So whatever you're working on, you can sort of look at those and hopefully that will help.